Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah here. We're holding the Mishnah Chelik Aleph and we will be learning today Amir Hashem Daf Ches Amid Aleph. We begin on Zayin Amid Beis, 2 lines off the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch, Siman Gimel Sif Yud Beis. Today's learning is L'Zech Nishmas Avi Moiri Rabbi Tzvi ben Remeir Alav Shalom, as well as L'Ilui Nishmas Miriam Liba Bas Devora Aleha HaShalom. So we pick up here in Sif Yud Beis. We are continuing to discuss the halachos that govern tznius and how one is supposed to comport himself when using the facilities. Says the Mechaber Sif Yud Beis, Yipane b'tznius balayla k'moi b'yom. When one has the need to defecate, he has to practice tznius, he has to practice modesty, all of the halachos that we've been discussing over here, since those halachos are based on Shivisi Hashem L'Negi Summit. They're based on the need for one to understand that he's always in the presence of the Rabbeinu Shalom, and it's an inyan of kavod for the Rabbeinu Shalom. So Yipana b'tznius balayla k'may b'yom. The same standards of tznius hold true by night, just as they do by day, even though it's dark. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, what the Mechaber wants to say with this is, which rules is the Mechaber speaking about? Don't think that you could expose more of your guf at night than you can by day because it's dark and nobody can see. No, the same way you're limited in what you're supposed to expose. We learned you're supposed to expose as little of your body, especially the private areas, as possible. Now, you're in a Beis HaKisei, you're in complete privacy, but why is that? Because because you're always in the presence of the Rabbeinu Shalom. The same thing holds true by night when it's dark outside. And we learned that you're not supposed to expose yourself until you sit down to use the facilities. You don't just expose your body and take your time. You uncover yourself as you sit down. Ukahai gavna. Those halachos are the halachos that the Mechaber is speaking of here when he says that the same guidelines hold true at night as do by day. And the reason is, ki lefanav yisparach, because before the Rabbeinu Shalom, Kuchabrichu, Chashecha Ka'ara. Dark is the same as night. Darkness doesn't prevent the Rabbeinu Shalom from seeing anything. Aval, however, there are halachos that do not apply at night. For example, Ein Tzarech Lehisrakik. We learned yesterday that if somebody is out in a field and he has no mechitzas around, there are no walls that he can position himself behind, he has to be misrachek, he has to distance himself from other people. He has to go to a distance where they will not be able to see his exposed private areas. At night, ein tzarech lehisrachek. That is based on not maloi chal aretz kavoidai, that's based on being visible by other people. So at night, nobody can see you. So at night, you don't have to be misrachek. V'im ein sham adam, indeed, says the Mishnah Berurah, this is going to sound strange to us because of our social norms. V'im ein sham adam, if there are no people around, mefana bar chayiv. Technically speaking, you can take care of your bodily needs, even defecation, in the street. Remember, we're talking about a day and age where they didn't have the same kind of sanitary facilities that we do. Somebody was out and about. He doesn't have his own private outhouse. He doesn't have access to one. It's dark. It's at night. There's nobody around. He can go to the side of the street and do what he needs to do. V'rak sheyizaher. However, he has to take care that he does not take care of his bodily needs in a place where people are going to walk, so that people should not become filthy from his excrement. Again, menschlichkeit. Do what you need to do, but make sure you're not going to cause harm to anybody else. And there's an interesting Sharat Sian over here, where he says, Pashut, this is obvious. Where we learn about Baba Kama Daf Gimel that a person has to take care where he puts down a stone, a knife, a package. Certainly we have halachos about people who open up their drains to let dirty water go out into the Rishus Harabim, kol hamakalkal b'Rishus Harabim. Person has to be careful. Menschlichkeit. Other people are going to walk over there. Make sure that you take care of your business somewhere where somebody else isn't going to be affected by it. By the way, it is, I think, helpful maybe just to realize this is the Chavetz Chaim talking about. So this is the Chavetz Chaim speaking in Radin, in pre-war Radin. I don't know exactly when the Chavetz Chaim wrote this, but realize that back in the day, the pollution that was caused by vehicles was not smog. It wasn't CO2. The pollution was excrement of animals. The Rechav was full of excrement. I remember seeing a picture of a Manhattan street, a busy Manhattan street back in the day with horses and cows and everything else. It was filthy. It was excrement all over the place. So it's not so min hanimna. Nowadays it's dogs, but it's not so common, Baruch Hashem, anymore. Okay. So, again, he said at night, you don't have to be misrachik, and indeed, if there's nobody there, even mafana baruchai, v'rakshi yizar shaliyah b'makabilach b'nei adam, k'dei shaliyah tanfu b'nei adam al yadai. Aval, however, im yesham adam, if there is a person around, afilu nachri, even an Eino Yehudi, also lipanes b'fanav. You're never allowed to be mefaneh, to defecate, in front of another person. If there's somebody around, you have to be misrachik. You have to distance yourself so that he can see you. V'chol zeh lipanes. However, this only applies to defecation. Aval lahashtin, when it comes to ketanim, when it comes to urination, motor afilu b'yoim b'fnei rabim im tzarich lekach. Ketanim, a person is allowed to go for ketanim even during the day, even in front of other people, if he has a need to. She'ein lo mokaim, meaning he doesn't have another place to go, whatever it is. It's an emergency, and there is no place to go to. There's no more private area than where he is. Al pidin, he's allowed to go for ketanim even during the day, even in front of other people. Va'afilu b'fnei isha, even in front of a woman. Mishum, why are we so makel? De'eka sakanta im yamin atzmai. Because the Chazal tell us that there is a sakana. If you hold back from the need to go for ketanim, that could bring sakana. It could even bring somebody, chas v'chalila, to become infertile. V'isha lo ytamid lahashtin, however, that's by a man. V'isha lo ytamid lahashtin, a woman should not urinate. Afilu neged panav shel tinoik, even in front of her own child. She should not urinate. And I believe the Mefarshim say this is true even if she really doesn't have to expose too much of her body in order to do so. Right? She could crouch down and just lift up the cloak or the dress, whatever it is that she's wearing. She doesn't really have to expose herself too much. Still and all, by a woman, why? Very interesting lashon brought down from Taisus and Bechoros, Mishum de'ika chatzifusa, because that is a midah of azus, it's brazenness. Somehow, I guess it's tznius, right? The midah of tznius is much more chomer by a woman than it is by a man. Kol kvuda bas melech penima, and a woman is supposed to go to the extra degree to maintain that special dignity of the Malka, of the Bas Melech, and this is a brazenness that is totally out of character for the personality of a Bas Yehudis, of a Yiddish woman. This is not, it's chatzifusa. It's a brazenness that's completely unbecoming to a woman. Also, a woman does not have the same sakana as a man. Apparently, the sakana that the Chazal speak about is by a man, not by a woman. Aval, it's studin, but if a woman has the ability to position herself so that she's not directly opposite, she'ena mashtenis mamish neged panav leslanba, that would be okay. All right, let's go to Sif Yud Gimel, bottom line here on Zion Amud Beis, says the Mechaber. Lo yashtin mu'umad. Now this is going to catch some people by surprise, but we'll have to, expand upon it as we go through the Sif. The Mechaber says, Lo yashtin mu'umad. A man should not go for ketanim, he should not urinate while standing. Why? mipnei nitzotzos hanitazin al raglov, because of the drips of urine that might splatter onto his feet. So a man is urinating, the flow of the urine goes out, it hits the ground, and now it could splatter. Some of that might land on his feet. Why is that such a great concern? So explains the Mishnah Berurah Chav Gimel al Raglov. Now he's going to walk away, and he's going to have splashes of urine on his shoes. The Yomru, people will look and they will say, Shehu Krush Shavcha, that he's somebody who has his erva, his gid, the makam amila, is damaged. It's cut, or there's something wrong with it, and because of that, she'ein meimei raglav mikalchin, his urine does not come out with a flow, so that the urine travels a distance away from his body. Ela shoisisin, rather it just pours out of the body and goes straight down, and that's why it landed on his shoe. So, why is that a problem? U'kroshavcha eino molid. Somebody whose male member is damaged, is wounded in that way, is not able to have children. V'yomru banav she'eino shaloi. And now somebody will be motzi laz on this person and say, guess what? His kids, they're not really his kids. He can't have kids. He's a kroshavcha. I remember I saw a couple of times, by the base of Kisei, he had urine all over his shoes. Why do you think he has urine on his shoes? Obviously, there's something wrong with him. The Meirich line just pours out directly down, and that's why he has urine on his shoes. So he's a kroshavcha, he's eino molid, he's not able to have kids. These people, these kiddalach that he's walking around with saying they're his kids, they're not really his kids. They're really from a different man. We're afraid a person shouldn't bring himself to such a laz. So again, the Mechaber says, Lo yashtin mu'umad, a man should not urinate while he's standing. Why? Because even though there's nothing wrong with him, and even though the urine will travel a distance before it hits the ground, it will splatter when it hits the ground, and some of those splashes might land on his shoes, and it might come to this kind of a laz. Sounds a little bit far-fetched maybe, but Chazal said we have to worry about such a thing. So therefore, Lo yashtin mu'umad. Continues the Mechaber though, and the Mechaber says, so one way out of this is if you're standing on a high place, so that when the urine lands, the urine is going to land lower than your shoes. So let's say somebody's standing on a ledge. Now he urinates, the urine travels away from his body, it lands on the ground downstairs, down on the bottom floor. He's standing up on a ledge, so it's not going to splatter on him. Or, continues the Mechaber, sheyashtin l'soich afar tichuach. Or if he's urinating onto dirt, and the dirt is loose dirt. It's not firmly packed soil where the urine might splash. It's sand where the urine is going to land and right away be absorbed. It's not going to splash. Pirush, the Rambam explains what's afar tichuach. Karka she'ena besula, not virgin soil. Elikigain shel eretz charusha. It's like plowed ground, so it's loose. Now, so what is the Mechaber telling us here? The Mechaber is saying this concern, and the reason why the Mechaber said Lo yashtin mu'umad is only in a metzias where the urine could actually splash on your shoes. But if the metzias is such that the urine is not going to splash on your shoes, right, because the urine is going to get absorbed by the afar tichuach, or the urine is going to land at a lower level than your shoes, then it's not a problem. So guess what? For us, it's also not a problem, generally speaking, because you are urinating into a toilet where it lands in the toilet and it stays there. It doesn't splash out and you don't have to worry. The old style urinals, which you still find sometimes in some very old shuls, were the urinals that went all the way down to the floor. So in that case, you actually urinated really on the floor. And the urine was landing on porcelain, which certainly the urine could splash, it could splatter. So those old-fashioned urinals could technically have this problem. The newfangled, the more modern urinals are the half urinals where you position your body where the urine is caught really as soon as it comes out of the body. It never gets down to the floor. It never gets down to the level of your shoes. So those urinals, l'chayra, would not be a problem. Incidentally, the Rishiva Zatzal, Rav Moshe Zecher Tzaddik V'Kadosh L'Vracha, writes in the Igris, and he was probably speaking about those old-fashioned urinals, which were designed, they were kind of like a niche in the wall, with a catch basin all the way down on the bottom on the floor, but there were no dividers of any kind between the urinals. The Rosh Hashanah was very unhappy with those urinals from its tznius standpoint, because he said, if you don't have to do that, even though we just said here the halacha is, technically speaking, you're allowed to urinate in front of anybody, even in front of the day, even in the middle of the day, even in front of a woman. That's if you have to. Like the lashon of the Mishnah Berurah, im tzarech lakach. If you need to, she'en lo makayim, because there's nowhere else. But obviously, we're supposed to comport ourselves with a higher level of tznius if we can. Therefore, Rav Moshe writes that if you don't have to use those urinals, if you go into a stall, go into a stall. If you're going to build urinals, Rav Moshe writes, there should be mechitzos between the urinals. There should be barriers between the urinals for the purpose of tznius. Okay, Ois Katan Chav Daled, bottom line, Zayin Amud Beis. So the Mechaber said you have to be careful about being mashtid mu'umad, imaloi, unless you're going to urinate you're standing on a high place and you're urinating on a lower place, or on Aver tichuach. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'im ein lo eitzos elu. If these eitzos are not practicable in the situation that you're in, v'gam sham I efsher b'yeshiva, and where you are, you cannot crouch down to urinate. So you're in a situation where you need to stand, and there's no Aver tichuach, and you're not standing on a makom gavaya. So, says the Mishnah Berurah, there is another eitzah to get out of this problem of the urine splashing on your shoes, and that is, we're going to learn that a man is never supposed to grasp the makom ha'erva, the gid. He's never supposed to hold on to it. But lower down, closer to the body by the beitzim, the scrotum, if you could hold over there, and you could, by holding over there, you could position the Aver, so then yisayeh bebeitzim lahagbia gid ktsas, to lift up the Aver, matlis ava, or by using a thick cloth. You could grasp the Aver with a thick cloth, and then you position the Aver so that the urine should travel further away from the body, so it should not splash on your shoes. Okay. The imis rami shenaflu nitzaitas araglov. What do you do if the urine did splash on your shoes? Mitzvah l'shafshafam. The Mishnah Berurah says, he brings down the Gemara, Yuma Lamed Amud Aleph, that it is a mitzvah. The Yisem Nikiyah Me'Hashem Yisrael. It is a mitzvah l'shafshafam, to wipe off the shoes and clean the shoes, so that you should not be putting yourself in a position where it's possible for somebody to be moitzi laz on you, on your children. Okay, now we go to the top line, Ches Amud Aleph, Sif Yod Daled. Says the Mechaber, Yizayer shaloi yerchois ba'ama v'yashtin. A man has to take care not to hold on to the Aver during the time of urination, imloi me'atara ulamata, unless he is grasping the Aver me'atara ulamata, from the corona, that's the ridge that's a little bit removed from the tip of the Aver, ulamata, and downwards. Now, some people get confused. What does this mean, ulamata? It means further away from the body. When the Aver is flaccid, when the Aver is soft and it hangs down, so lamata is from the atara, from the corona, ulamata, and downward. Now, if the Aver would be erect, some would argue that that's ulamaila, but the Gemara always refers to that as being lamata. So it's from the corona and downwards. Over there, Chazal say, you're permitted to touch the Aver. Now, what is this problem with touching the Aver? Let's take a look here right away in the Mishnah Berurah. It says the Mishnah Berurah, first of all, va'afilu im ha'aver bekishui, even if the Aver is erect, mutter me'atara ulamata, it is still mutter to touch the Aver from that point and outwards, me'atara ulamata. You know what? Let's go back into the Mechaber here for a moment. Yizar shalo yechois ba'ama v'yashtidim loy me'atara ulamata. Why? Explains the Mechaber. Mipnei shemoitzi shechva zera levatala. Because touching the Aver could lead to the problem of being moitzi shechva zera levatala, to being moitzi zera, to be releasing Siman levatala for no purpose. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what are we talking about over here? Why is that going to lead to hitzas shechva zera levatala? Is it simply a physical thing that by touching it you might expel some zera that happens to be in the Aver? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. What the Mechaber means to say is, through the touching of the Aver, the body will get heated up, and it will bring to hirhurim rayim. Especially nowadays when we live, unfortunately, in this prasta galus that we're in, and it's so difficult, shmiras einayim, it's so difficult to avoid all the pretzas that you see, whether it's in real life, or it's pictures, or it's advertisements, or whatever it is. You come out, I say it's probably not really permissible to go to a mall nowadays. It's disgusting. You go to the mall, walking in the mall and seeing the windows and the advertisements is almost like going and buying a Schmutzendicke magazine, what you see out there nowadays. So certainly there's this problem, and if somebody comes to touch the Aver, that could bring to hirhurim, it could stimulate the Aver, and that could eventually lead to the chomer and the severity of this Avera, of being moitzi shechva zera levatala, ayin be'evan ha'ezer, Siman chav gimel, seifim aleph and beis. He refers us to the Shulchan Aruch, who discusses this in detail, and the severity of the Avera in Evan ha'ezer, Siman chav gimel, seifim aleph and beis. So again, the Mechaber told us here so far in Sif Yod Daled, and unfortunately this is a habit that some people have. When a man goes to urinate, do not touch the Aver. You're not supposed to touch the Gid. You're allowed to touch the Gid, HaTorah ulamata, from the corona and outwards, further away from the guf. That you're allowed to touch. Why are you allowed to touch over there? So the Mefarshim seem to say, and it seems to be borne out, that physically, that area is not as sensitive. And since it's not as sensitive, it doesn't bring to hirhurim, and it doesn't bring to these problems of itzah shechva zera levatala. Okay. Continues the Mechaber now, second line down, last word of the line. Ella imkein hu nosui. There is an exception made for a married man. Says the Mishnah Chavav Zayid, hu nosui. Why? Why is there an exception? Somebody who's married, he knows he has a wife at home. So if he's going to have such a taiva, so he has a wife. One of the famous Rabbi Yaakov Emden, who speaks about the different kavanas that a person is supposed to have during marital relations. He gives different kavanas for different madregas of a person, and he says the most pashut one is that when a person is having relations with his wife, the kavana that he should have is that this is going to keep him away from a chait. It's going to keep him away from improper thoughts, chas v'chalila, improper relations. So somebody has a wife, if he'll touch himself, and that will bring to a taiva, okay, he knows, listen, I'll be home later today, I'll be home tonight, my wife is home, pas besalim. And therefore, the Yetzer Hara will not be able to grab him the same way. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, v'im hi nida, but if his wife happens to be a nida at the time, or maybe the man is traveling, and he's not going to have access to his wife, also, then it's also for him too. This kula that the Mechaber gives over here, he says that a man is not supposed to touch the Gid, only HaTorah ulamata, except im hu nosui, a married man. Says the Mechaber at Even HaEzer, da'afilu nosui, even a married man, einer mutar lahishit yado la'am klal, he's not allowed to touch the Aver, ela b'shashu tzarech l'nekavav. Only if there is the need that we're discussing over here. Let's say he wants to be able to position the Aver so that he doesn't have this problem of the urine splattering on his shoes. So then we have a kula for somebody who's nasui. But stam, if there's no need, then even a married man is not supposed to touch the Aver at all. Now, what does that mean at all? Because right away, some people are going to wonder, well, what happens if I'm taking a shower and I need to wash myself? I mean, what happens if I need to clean myself? So if you take a look at Even HaEzer in Siman Chav Gimel, there is a Be'er Heitev. It's Be'er Heitev Ois Cotton Hay, who says that for rechitza purposes or for other kinds of purposes similar to that. Let's say somebody has to put a cream on for a skin ailment, whatever it is. So the words of the Berurah are derech ha'avora, like just in a passing way, you need to wash. So you wash and that's it. So that, he says, is mutter. But his words are aval hisakev sham, but to spend time there, the Berurah says you should not do. Okay. Now we have to finish Sif Yud Dalid. Says the Mechaber, Umidus Chasidus Lizar Afilu Nosoi. It would be a Midus Chasidus, even somebody who's married should refrain from touching over there if possible. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kachav Ches. It's a very interesting Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, let's say somebody is standing in a very high place. He's in a park somewhere and he's walking on the cliffs and there's no bathroom in sight and he has the need for ketanim. So he's going to go for ketanim. He's standing in a very high place and he's like perched on the edge of the cliff. Then the Mishnah Berurah says there's no problem of touching the Aver. Why? If somebody's standing in a place where he's fearful because it's very high, he's afraid he's going to fall, then by a married person, there's absolutely no reason to be machmer. Why? So first of all, we saw that for a married person, right away there's a heter, right? It's only a midas chasidus for a married person. Now, if you're standing somewhere where you're afraid you might fall, so then you're tarud, the fear of falling is going to prevent you from having any other kind of hirhurim that you're not supposed to have, and therefore these problems do not apply. Okay, now we go to Sif Tes Vav, 3 lines down in the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Mechaber, even somebody who is not married, mutar l'sayeya bebeitzim, is always allowed to be misayeya, to help position the Aver the way it should be for proper urination by holding on to the beitzim, by holding on lower down in the scrotum. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Chav Tes bebeitzim, why she'ena mischabim al yedei kach, that does not heat up the guf and it does not bring to hirurim. Sometimes there is a heter to hold on to the gid itself. If you use a thick cloth, that doesn't bring about this problem. But to use your cloak, which is thin, that would be asr. However, there are those that don't like even the idea of the matlas ava. We do not know exactly what is meant by a matlis ava, a thick cloth. What exactly is the shear of this cloth? Okay. Now I just want to read to you Bir Halacha, Dibra Maschil Yizar Shalo Yechois. We spoke in Sif Yud Gimel about the problem of the urine splattering on the shoes and somebody coming to be mitzi laz on you or your children. Then we spoke about that you're not allowed to go ahead and hold the gid to position the gid in a more efficacious manner. Says the Bir Halacha, nice cut Yodal Ritzaina Loimar. Even if you are not in a place where you could urinate into loose earth, and you don't have access to a place where you're going to be standing high up so that the urine will land lower down, and for whatever reason, crouching down and urinating is not an eight, so you can't. So you're in the situation where the problem of laz applies. You don't have afer tichuach. You don't have a high place to stand. You can't sit. You have no eitzah. So the yachal lova yedei zel alaz abanav al yedei ani tzaitzais kishalo yecha is ba'ama. The only eitzah that you seem to have to escape the problem of the laz is by holding on to the gid. Afilu hachi aser. That's exactly what the Mechaber is coming to tell us in Sif Yud Daled. I told you in Sif Yud Gimel the problem of the laz, and therefore you have to take care not to be mashtid mu'umad. But if you don't have any eitzah other than holding on to the gid, still says the Mechaber, Yizar shalo yecha ba'ama v'yashtin. You still can't do that. Why? Because of the severity of the issue of Yitzar Shechva Zera Levatol. Okay, now we go to Sif Tes Zayin. Says the Mechaber, Lo hutar lanosui lechais ba'ama. Again, this heter for a married person to hold on to the gid is only ela lahashtin, only for the purposes of proper urination. Ava lehischakech, but to scratch or rub over there, loy, there's no heter. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton lamed lehischakech loy, lefishachikoch, maybe lidei over kal yove lidei shechvazer. Vayin b'chayodam, shamato ayde beged av. Again, the chayodam has this heter of the thick cloth. Umuter lisroik zakan hatachtoin. A man is allowed to comb the hair in that area if it's bothering him. Actually, yiga osbama b'yodai, but he should not hold on to the Aver at that time. Vayin b'bir halacha, and he sends us to the bir halacha. Okay, last sif in Siman Gimel, sif Yod Zayin, hamashe nikavav. Somebody who restrains himself from the need to urinate, Aver misham bal tishaktzu, is Aver, and a simple reading of the Mechaber is he's Aver the Isser Daraisa of bal tishaktzu. Like tishaktzu is tafshay seichem. That happens to be written in the parsha of Shrotzim, but and I think right shkatzim or masim maybe by machalois asurais lois tishaktzu. But the Chazal expand the Isser of Lo Tishaktzu to include anything that's abominable, anything that's disgusting. A person's not supposed to engage in things that are disgusting. Restraining yourself from the need to urinate is considered, this is not really talking about, he's talking about both, defecating and urination, I believe. That you would be over on Baal Tishaktzu. Let's hold that thought for a minute. If it's referring to both, let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Says, now, the Mefarshim, the Achronim, seem to disagree whether this is a daraisa or a darabanan. Is it a real daraisa of Lo Tishaktzu, or is it a darabanan based on the principle of Lo Tishaktzu? But either way, it's also as Bal Tishaktzu, either as a darabanan or as a daraisa. The daf from a couple of days ago that a darabanan should not be kal. The Gemara is discussing whether or not you could do smicha on a karban on Yom Tov. The problem of doing smicha is a darabanan. It's being mishamish with a balchai, using a balchai, and Shabbos Yom Tov is a darabanan, right? And the Rabbi Yochanan says that a shvus should not be kal beinecha. A darabanan should not be kal. A darabanan is an iser. It's an darabanan. It's an iser. So this is either a darabanan or a daraisa, says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton lamed aleph. Bal tishaktzu. Ve'emasha atzmai liktanim. Okay, so the Mechaber, the Mishnah Berurah seems to be learning that the Mechaber, strictly speaking, was covering gedolim, defecation, not ktanim, not urination. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ve'emasha atzmai liktanim, if somebody restrains himself from the need to go for ktanim, over mishum bal tishaktzu, that is, it is also bal tishaktzu. The pasuk says that there should not be, you're not allowed to castrate an animal. You're not allowed to do something to an animal which will prevent it from from reproducing. So the Chachamim expand that to somebody who restrains himself from ketanim, because like I said earlier this year, the Chazal say that could cause somebody to lose his ability to have children. So that would be, you would be over lo yia akar va'akara. Okay. If somebody restrains himself from the need to pass gas, over about Bal Tishaktzu, that is not included in the Isser of Bal Tishaktzu. Gamo Isser Bal Tishaktzu nitchem mipnei kavod abrius, and as far as this Isser of Bal Tishaktzu, it is nitchem mipnei kavod abrius. Keep going, for example. If somebody has to restrain himself until he could find a properly private place, person is searching for a basic kisei. Person is walking in the street, he's searching for a basic kisei. He shouldn't say, it's a deraisa, bal tishaktzu. I guess I'm going to have to do my business right here. No, if you're doing it because you're looking for a bathroom, that's okay. The Mishnah Berurah says a person should take great care to clean himself well after defecation. Why? Because the halacha is that tsaya, excrement, b'mekayma, in its place on the body, right, where it comes out, is b'mashahu. You're not allowed to say divrei Torah, you're not allowed to make a bracha. It's considered mitunaf b'mashu. K'masha kasa b'siman ayin vav sif hey. If practicable, the Chavetz Chaim suggests moistening something to clean that area very well. Okay, so that closes out Siman Gimel, and we're going to make a haschala on a very fascinating Siman Dalet. Who could believe we're already holding in Siman Dalet in Mishnah Berurah? This is a fascinating and a rather complex Siman. Now, before we even begin the Siman, I'll just make this one little preface. And that is that when we speak about washing netillas yadayim in the morning, when we speak about negelvaser, I think the primary thought that goes through everybody's mind is, yeah, we wash negelvaser in the morning because there's a ruach ra, and we have to get rid of the ruach ra. That's one reason. But that reason is based primarily on a zayar. The Rishonim, the Rashba, and the Rosh, we have a machlekes Rishonim, what the ikar reason of washing the netillas yadayim is. Really, the ruach ra is really secondary. The primary reasons for washing the netillas yadayim in the morning are the Rashba and the Rosh. So let's start Siman Dalet. Dine netillas yadayim, the halachos that pertain to the netillas yadayim, u'boi chav gimel seifim, and here we have 23 seifim. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, Yirchatz yadav, a person should wash his hands v'yavarech al netillas yadayim. You wash your hands in the morning and you make a bracha of al netillas yadayim on that netila. We're going to stop with the Mechaber. We're not going to go yet into the Ramah. Says the Mishnah Berurah. This Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Aleph is the Yesoidos for the rest of the Siman. We got to know this Ois Katan in the Mishnah Berurah, and we got to know it well. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Aleph. Yirchatz yadav, you have to wash your hands in the morning, says the Chavetz Chaim. Yesh al zeh shnei ta'amim. There are two primary reasons for why we wash negelvaser in the morning. Harosh kasav, the Rosh writes, levisha yadayim shal adam askani yosein. It is the nature of a person's hands that they are busy. The hands wander around. V'i efsher shelo yiga bebasar hamatunaf balayla. And it is impossible that a person's hands will not cover a mokum mitunaf, an unclean area of the body during the night. During the night, you're in bed, you're asleep. You're either wearing night clothes or maybe you're not even wearing anything, right? You're certainly not tsanua the way you are during the day. And it's impossible that the hands during the night won't travel around and touch a mokum mechusa, touch an area of the body that is typically covered. And that would be considered a mokum mitunaf, an unclean area. And that makes your hands not roi for tefillah. So says the Rosh, levishi yadayim shel adam askani yosein, v'i efshe shel yiga b'basar mitunaf balayla. Lozeh, because of this, tikdu chazal, the chazal will masakin, baracha al hanetila, to wash your hands with a bracha, lekriyishma v'letfila, in preparation for Kabbalas al Malchus Shemayim of Kriyishma and for davening. So, again, according to the Rosh, why do you need the netillas yadayim? Because your hands are unclean, and you cannot say Kriyishma, you can't be Mekabel al Malchus Shemayim, and you can't stand in front of Rabbanu Shalayla with tefillah. So, what do you have to do? You have to wash your hands. And with a bracha, Shekidishanim b'mitzvayis v'tzivanu, al netillas yadayim. V'arashba kasa. The Rashba writes, different reason. Lefi shebeshachar achar hashena, in the morning after you wake up from sleep, anu nasim kibriya chadasha. Guess what? We're a brand new bria. Yeah? How old are you? 50. No, you're not 50. You're 1 day old. You were born this morning. You're a bria chadasha. Diksiv, like the pasuk says in Eicha, chadashim ala bekarim. The Rabbanu Shalom renews us every morning. Rabbe emunasecha. Chaste Hashem ki lo samnu ki lo chalu rachamav. Chadashim la bekarim. We are renewed every morning. Rabbe emunasecha. Great is your faithfulness. So every day you're a bria chadasha. And therefore, says the Rashba, tzrichin anu lahaydais la yisparach. We have to thank the Rabbeinu Shalom, shebra'anu lichvaydai, who created us for what? For His kavod. We were created for avodas Hashem all the way back Ois Katan Aleph in the Mishnah Berurah, Siman Aleph, Sif Aleph, Ki lekach nivra ha'adam. K'may sh'amar ha'kasav kol ha'nikra b'shmi, v'lechvay di barasif. So we have to thank the Rabbeinu Shalom, She'abra'anu l'chvaydai, who created us for his kavod, lisharsai, to serve him, ulevarech b'shmai, ulevarech shmai, and to bench his name. Val davar zeh tiknu b'shachar kol oisan abrachas, she'anu mevarchid b'kol biker. And it's for that reason that we have brachas hashachar. Why do we have brachas hashachar every morning? Shenasal sech v'vin alafka ben yamavay leila, pekeach ivrim, mal b'sharum, zaykev kefufim. Why do we have all of these brachas? Because chadashim labekarim rabbe emunasecha, the Rebbeinu Shalom created us anew every morning, and we have to thank the Rebbeinu Shalom for all of these things. Lochein, therefore, says the Rashba, gam davro zeh tiknu b'shachar. So they were also masakid in the morning, lehiskadesh biktushasai, to sanctify ourselves in the kedusha of the Rebbeinu Shalom, v'litel yadeinu min akli, and to wash our hands from a keli, kikayin, like a kayin, shemekadish yadav min akiyar, who had to wash his hands from the kiyar in the Beis HaMikdash, kaidem avedasai. Wow, says the Rashba. You're half asleep in the morning, and you get up, and you go to wash your hands from a keli. You know why you're washing your hands from a keli, Rabbi say? Because you're a kayin. You're like a kayin in the Beis HaMikdash who's going to do the avodah. What is the avodah nowadays? Unishalma parim sfasenu. Our tefillah, our Shemana Esrei, that's our avodah. Why do we wash our hands from a keli in the morning? Because we have to be mekadesh ourselves. We have to be mekadesh ourselves like a kayin washing from the kiyar. According to the Rashba, that's why we wash in the morning. And we make a bracha on that washing. So here we had the two reasons. Rush, because our hands are unclean. And we have to clean our hands before we can say Kriya Shpar Tefillah. And we make a bracha. Rashba, we're like a kayin that has to be mekadesh our yadayim before we do the avodah. Before we mekabel malchus shemayim. Before we daven. Before we oisik ba'avodah. We have to wash our hands. We have to be mekadesh ourselves. Says the Mishnah Berurah halacha. Halacha l'maisa, as we're going to see as we go on. Anu taisvin kishnei ataimim l'chumra le'inyin netillas. We take into account both the Rosh's reasons and the Rashba's reason l'chumra, because there are instances where one applies and one doesn't. A very simple case. You didn't go to sleep. You didn't go to sleep, according to the Rosh. Your yadayim were never askaniyos. According to the Rashba, are you a beri chadasha if you didn't sleep? Maybe, yeah. So we're going to see different cases where one reason might apply and the other reason might not apply. Okay, l'kaman b'zeh Siman. Now, very pertinent halacha that the Mishnah Berurah closes out with here, the final line of this ice cotton, and we're going to stop at the end of this ice cotton. I wanted to do bays also, but we're not going to make it. If for whatever reason you neglected to make the bracha of al netillas yadayim before davening Shemona Esrei, shuv lo yivarech achar atfila lekule alma. After davening, you can no longer make the al netillas yadayim. Why is that? Well, according to the Rosh, the whole point of the al netillas yadayim was yadayim askani oisein, and you touched a makom metunif, so you had to clean your hands. Why? For Kriya Shema and for Tefillah. You already said Kriya Shema, you already davened. So that's it. There's no point in washing the hands anymore. But how about according to the Rashba? According to the Rashba, you became a Berei Chadasha, right? You are mekadesh your hands with the washing from the kais, like the kayin before the avodah, and the Rashba said that Chazal were masakin a bracha on that, like Chazal were masakin all the other berachas hashachar. So what does it have to do with tefillah? The answer is, like I told you earlier when I was talking about the Rashba, the ikar, according to the Rashba, is not like you're a kayin who has to wash before the avodah. What's the avodah? Unisham parmis fasenu. It's the tefillah. That's the avodah. So if you already davened, too late, you can no longer wash. You no longer make the bracha of al netillas yadayim. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be made against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should say Yeshua Sefor's Parnaset Shidduchim Tol as in need, and we should be zeichet to see the Bias Kal Tzedek b'meher of Yameinu. Amen. Be well.